Every year, sequels come out that have all of us wondering, how did that movie get a sequel? And then there's these other movies that create these interesting worlds populated by fascinating characters that never got a sequel. So today we're going to look at the top 10 movies that need a sequel. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comment section. Let me know, what are the 10 movies that you think need a sequel? My list isn't the right list, it's just my list, and I would love to see yours. One more thing before we get started, this video was suggested by my supporters over on Patreon. If you enjoy Sean Chandler Talks About and want even more content, some early access, some extended cuts, and a weekly live stream, consider joining over on Patreon. And there is a companion video to this one with more movies that I think need a sequel. With that said, let's get started, and these are in no particular order. First up is Elita Battle Angel. The 2019 film was directed by Robert Rodriguez, and it's from a script from James Cameron. And if you don't know the backstory on this project, back about 20 years ago, James Cameron was trying to decide, did he want to do Alita Battle Angel or Avatar? Obviously, he ended up doing Avatar, but he still had a passion for Alita Battle Angel, which is like a 30-year-old manga. And eventually, in 2019, we finally got the movie. Now, I didn't think the first film was great, but I liked the world that they created. I loved the central character of Elita, and it's a world that I felt had more stories to tell. And because it is based off this long-running manga, there's plenty more that could be explored. And even the first film itself set up a bunch of plot threads for what was next. I think the first film did kind of all the heavy lifting of setting up this world, figuring out the style, and now they can explore it even more. Take this character that I thought was just such a fascinating, naive, but strong central character and do so much more in this fun world of battling robots and all this wild, crazy stuff. I'd love to see a sequel to this one. Next up is Galaxy Quest, a fantastic comedy from 1999 that's both a celebration and a send-up of Star Trek, as well as a celebration of the fandom at the time. The reason I think that this one is just primed for a follow-up is because fandom has changed so much since 1999, where Star Trek conventions were very niche in the 1990s. I know that because I went to a lot of Star Trek conventions in the 1990s. And then over the last 20 plus years, Comic-Cons have gone into the mainstream, and that inherently sets up an interesting plot thread and theme for what you can explore with this celebration of fandom and Star Trek. Likewise, in that time frame, Star Trek was remade by J.J. Abrams for the mainstream as a blockbuster. So there's all these interesting potential plot threads about the mainstreamification of fandom. I think I invented a new word with that could be explored. Some of this was touched on in a movie called Zero Charisma that came out, I don't know, about 10 years ago, touched on kind of Dungeons and Dragons and how it was becoming mainstream. Actually, one of my best friends from my entire life is in that movie. Here I am! And so I just think there's a lot that you can touch on that doesn't rehash the original, but explores new themes involving Star Trek, involving the fandom. It'd be very cool stuff. Then we have Dredd, the second theatrical adaptation of Judge Dredd, that everyone that saw it loved it, but not a ton of people saw it in the theater. A big part of the problem here is that Dredd is not a particularly mainstream A-list comic book property, but back in the 90s, Sylvester Stallone did a not-so-great adaptation of it, so that's the mainstream's knowledge of Judge Dredd. So when they did kind of this remake, people were like, oh, really? You're gonna remake that lousy Stallone film from the mid-90s? I am the law! But what they did with Dredd was a much more faithful adaptation and just kind of a cool post-apocalyptic sci-fi action film in and of itself. You got a great central character in Dredd played by Carl Urban, and then just a world that you want to explore how these judges fight crime in this brutal futuristic world. And then it had a cool style to the way the action and just Everything was visualized. There's more stories to tell here. They got it right the first time, but enough people just didn't go and see it. Moving right along, Serenity. If you don't know what Serenity is, essentially it's the film follow-up to Joss Whedon's TV show Firefly, which was essentially Joss Whedon's version of Star Wars. It's a space western about these outlaws with this oppressive government. There's kind of conspiracy theories kind of going on, people with superpowers, all kinds of cool stuff brought together. And when the TV show aired, Fox botched the release schedule and the promotion. They kept changing days. So nobody watched it when it first came out. But as soon as it came out on DVD, it found a huge cult following that led to the film being made. But once again, because it was only in that kind of cult status, the movie did okay, but it didn't make big money. And so you have this situation where Joss Whedon set up this fantastic world with a great set of interesting characters that were cast perfectly, and we never got to fully explore it. And while the film Serenity closed out a lot of the plot lines of season 1, there's so much more you could do in this world, so many more stories you want to see with these characters. And even if they did it now, you could bring everyone back and kind of give them one more trip 15 years later, see where they're all at. I would love to see it. Now, something a little bit different, Ghostbusters 3, Hellbent. Now, this one is more in the category of movies, sequels that we needed rather than need, because it can't happen at this point in time. But back in the 90s, Dan Aykroyd was trying to do a Ghostbusters 3 with the original batch of Ghostbusters while trying to kind of bring in the next generation of Ghostbusters into the mix. The plot line was going to involve them like going to hell and interdimensional changes and alternate New York cities. They had conversations about what I have. Chris Farley is one of them, Ben Stiller, Chris Rock. They wanted to recruit Will Smith at one point in time. All of these big, gigantic, ambitious ideas. And we could have seen the original Ghostbusters doing something wild, crazy, and different, because Ghostbusters 2 as is kind of a rehash of the original one in certain ways. So this one was going to try and do something wildly different. But Bill Murray wasn't interested. Sigourney Weaver wasn't interested. So we never got another closing out that trilogy movie in the original set of Ghostbusters films. But I think they had some wild, insane ideas that had they locked in, gotten everybody on board, maybe something cool could have happened. Next up, True Lies. True Lies is a fantastic action movie from James Cameron and Arnold Schwarzenegger that sets up this interesting world of spies, espionage, combined with family drama and comedy. And it's just one of the best action movies of all time. And the movie ends setting up where things could go in the future. With kind of the journey with the wife and everything that happens, it sets up more adventures. Inherently, the spy genre itself, I think, lends itself to continuing adventures for the characters because there's always more threats out there. There's always more people that want to blow up a city or the world or take something over. And so it's easy to kind of tell new stories in this world. And in fact, they planned on doing a True Lies 2, but after September 11th, the world got more complicated. Then James Cameron realized he wanted to go to Pandora for 20 years. And so we never got it. But I think that there was so much potential for more stories with this family in this world of spies. I mean, it'd be easy to do a True Lies 2. Just get James Cameron to stop working on all those Avatar sequels he's working on. Their daughter from the movie, Eliza Dushku, she's still working. She's great in kind of these action roles. Jamie Lee Curtis, obviously, still rock solid as a movie star, and Arnold is a legend. I'd be all on board. Then we have Inception. Christopher Nolan's Inception, I would say, is just one of the best movies of the 21st century. And it creates this interesting world where you can go into people's dreams, and that just has so much potential. Now, when I say I want a sequel to Inception, really what I want is more stories in that world. I don't want to find out what happened next with Cobb and his family and give a more definitive answer to that. But the technology, the concept of going into dreams, there's so many things you could do with that. It doesn't have to be another heist movie. You could shift genres. You could make it a horror film. There's so many interesting things that can happen as soon as characters can go into someone else's dream. The potential for creativity, outside the box storytelling, and new things that we've never seen in cinema. They're just on the table as soon as you can go into dreams. And that's why I think Inception is primed so well to have some kind of follow-up.
I 100% agree with you.
Real quick, before I give you my top 3, remember to join me down below in the comment section. Share which movies do you want a sequel to. My list's not the right list. These are just the movies I want to see a sequel to, and I would love to know what movies you would love to see a sequel to. Also, remember there's a companion to this over on my Patreon page with 7 more movies that I would love to see a sequel to. Join at any level and you can unlock that video and so much more. Moving into our final 3, Stargate. Stargate is a world so primed for sequels that it actually spawned roughly 1,000 TV spin-offs, but we never got a theatrical sequel to the movie starring Kurt Russell and James Spader. The plotline involves these gates to the stars that can take you to these other worlds. And in the first film, it took them to kind of this alternate Earth with this alternate Egypt with aliens. And as soon as you have this type of technology that can take you to other worlds, there's so much story potential to do interesting things, going places, things coming to us, and so much more. It was directed by Roland Emmerich, who, after directing Stargate, directed Independence Day, and then for 25 years became known as the guy that just blows up the Earth in a bunch of different ways. And so he knows how to do big spectacle. And I think if you brought that back to this kind of smaller storytelling, it's not even that small of storytelling, but kind of bring all of that he's learned to kind of telling these stories about traveling the stars with this set of characters where we're learning, exploring, tying to Earth's history while having alien threats out there that are trying to kill us. There's a lot of fun to be had there. Next to last film on our list is Edge of Tomorrow, the film from just a few years back about Tom Cruise in a time loop as aliens are attacking the Earth. And it was one of these movies that was marketed kind of weird, so it seemed way more serious in the marketing than the actual film itself, which is a lot of fun, has a good bit of emotion, and finds a way to repeat the same day over and over again while still progressing the story and the characters' arc. And as you get to the end of it, it's so satisfying, but at the same time, there's so many more things you could do as soon as you've created this world where you can transfer this ability to loop the day based off when you die, to rediscover what's going to happen, to plot ahead. There's all these potential storylines that you can go with that. And so we won the battle that one day. We stopped what was happening. What happens next with these aliens and their attempt to invade us, and what are we going to do in light of the information that was acquired? But honestly, anytime you've got Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt in mech suits in a time loop story battling aliens, need I say more? Of course I want more of that. And finally, Aliens, James Cameron's follow-up to Ridley Scott's Alien, 2 of the best sci-fi movies of all time. Aliens being one of the best sci-fi action films of all time, and Alien being one of the best sci-fi horror films of all time. They gave us one of the best movie characters of all time in Ripley, and it's baffling to me that we never got a third film where we discover what happened to Ripley and Newt, and did she go on to adopt her? What happened with the aliens? Where did they come from? Was the corporation ever exposed for all of their greed and corruption? No, we only got 2 movies in this franchise, and I think that there's more stories to tell there. But my real final pick on here is Man of Steel, the first movie in the DCEU and the movie that propelled Henry Cavill to the A-list, has never gotten a proper sequel. Of course, Batman v Superman was a follow-up. It followed up on a bunch of plot points. Of course, he was one of the 2 title characters of that film. But it's a team-up movie, and it's a setup movie. It's not just Man of Steel 2, and Man of Steel was shot 10 years ago. Henry Cavill seems willing to do another one of these movies, but for whatever reason, WB doesn't want to do it. They've done Justice League 2 times, Suicide Squad, which was not well received, got a sequel made for it. It got a spin-off about Harley Quinn made about it. We're getting a sequel to Shazam, but Superman, the original superhero, He can't get his own follow-up to his own movie. I don't understand why they didn't greenlight this movie years ago, and for whatever reason, they don't like good old-fashioned normal Superman. It just seems obvious that Superman, Henry Cavill, should get a proper follow-up for his Superman where he just gets to be normal Superman, because we saw his origin story in Man of Steel, we see him deconstructed in Batman v Superman, and then he's black suit Superman being revived in the Justice League movies. We've never seen a normal Superman story in the DCEU. And now we're going off and doing something with Ta-Nehisi Coates. Like, I don't get it. Why don't you want to tell just a normal Superman story, WB? Give us Man of Steel 2. Just do it. Do it. Just do it. Anyway, that's my take on it. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you want that companion video with 7 more movies that I think need a sequel, the link is down below in the description. Join at any level to unlock that video and so much more. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies too much.